Myth Wanderer presents the story of the woman who read the rules of the gods and then used them. In a sunlit palace in Corinth, a woman stands perfectly still while her entire glittering world collapses quietly around her. She is not screaming, she is not weeping, she is doing slow, careful arithmetic somewhere in the dark behind her eyes. Her husband has just traded her away for a younger bride and a glittering golden throne by the sea. He believes he has finally won and that she will simply vanish, quiet and harmless, into the dust of exile. But he has forgotten one small and utterly fatal thing about the strange foreign woman he once married. Every promise he ever made to her, he swore aloud, calling the gods themselves to stand and witness it. And in this ancient world, the gods are always listening, always counting every vow, always waiting to collect their due. So when a man breaks a sacred oath sworn in their names, who is left to make him pay the full price? Her name is Medea, granddaughter of the sun, and she is about to answer that question completely. To understand the cold fire that is coming for Jason, you have to travel back to where it was first lit. First, a kingdom at the very edge of the world. Far to the east, past every Greek map and every safe harbor, lies the strange kingdom of Colchis at the world's edge. Here, the sun god Helios stables his fiery horses each night before they climb burning into the morning sky. And here lives his granddaughter, a young princess with real sunlight buried somewhere deep behind her dark and watchful eyes. Medea is no ordinary mortal woman, waiting quietly in a tower to be married off by her cruel father. Her blood runs straight back to the blazing sun itself, and her own aunt is the dread sorceress Circe. She knows the secret names of herbs, the slow turning of poisons, and the old words that quietly bend the world. Her terrible power is not learned patiently from books. It is inherited, woven into her very bones from birth. Her father is King Aeetes, proud and cruel, and he guards a single treasure that the whole hungry world desires. Deep within a dark and sacred grove hangs the Golden Fleece, glowing softly in the cool green shadows of the trees. A great sleepless dragon coils around its tree, eyes forever burning, never once closing in sleep across the long years. For a long age, the fleece stays safe, and Colchis sleeps, and Medea's quiet life runs its patient, ordered course. Then one gray morning, a strange foreign ship cuts hard across the horizon, its many oars flashing like beating wings. Aboard that ship sails a man named Jason, and behind him strains a restless crew of the greatest Greek heroes. Jason has crossed the whole sea for the fleece, but his shining quest is really a trap dressed up as glory. Back in his homeland, his own uncle Helios stole the throne and lives in fear of the rightful young heir. So Peleus sent Jason chasing the fleece across the world, completely certain the long and deadly journey would quietly kill him. It is a death sentence carefully disguised as a hero's grand and unforgettable adventure across the wide and hungry sea. But Jason does not know the harsh rules of Colchis, and he does not understand the silent woman now watching him. King Aeetes greets the travel-worn strangers with a wide and gracious smile, sharp enough to draw fresh blood. He agrees to surrender the precious fleece, but only if Jason can first survive one cruel and impossible trial. He must yoke two enormous bulls with hooves of bronze that breathe living fire straight from their snorting throats. Then he must sow a bare field with dragon's teeth, which spring up instantly as a whole screaming army of soldiers. It simply cannot be done by any living man. Aeetes knows it. Every hero in the Silent Hall knows it. Every man knows it, but not the clever woman standing silent and unnoticed in the long shadows of the throne room. High above the mortal world, the goddess Aphrodite leans down from the clouds and whispers a single sharp instruction to her son. The winged boy Eros lifts his small golden bow, takes careful aim at the unsuspecting princess, and lets the arrow fly. The arrow strikes Medea straight through the heart, and suddenly the whole vast world narrows down to one single face. She did not choose this sudden burning love. It was fired into her like a blazing dart from the heavens. But the meddling gods made one fatal mistake. They handed that arrow to the cleverest mind in the entire world. Medea burns for Jason, yes, but even fully on fire with love, her cold and careful mind keeps working. She knows her father will surely murder these foreign strangers the very instant the impossible trial is finally lost. And she knows that she alone holds the secret power to keep this doomed man, Jason, alive past the dawn. So she goes to him in the dark of night, carrying a choice that will end up costing her absolutely everything. She offers him a fireproof ointment and the hidden secret to surviving the deadly sown field of armed teeth. In return, she asks for one single thing only, a solemn sworn oath to take her away as his lawful wife. Jason swears it gladly and quickly, calling the deathless gods themselves to stand and witness every single eager word. He swears by Zeus, the great guardian of all oaths, the god who never once forgets a single broken vow. Medea hears the warm promise and believes it completely, and that fragile belief becomes the buried seed of all the ruin. At first, like Jason walks alone onto the open field, his bare skin slick and shining with Medea's secret oil. The fireballs charge, breathing roaring flame, and the searing fire washes over his body harmlessly, like warm summer water. He yokes them both. The watching crowd gasps aloud, and the cruel smile of Aeetes begins to curdle on his face. Jason sows the dragon's teeth deep, and rows of fully armed warriors rise up screaming from the freshly broken soil. Then he does exactly as wise Medea secretly taught him and hurls a single heavy stone into their crowded ranks. The confused soldiers instantly turn upon each other in the dust, and the whole earthborn army destroys itself by dusk. Aeetes stares in growing horror and slowly understands that someone inside his very own house has quietly betrayed him. He will not honor the bargain now. Instead, he plans to burn the foreign ship and every living soul aboard it. Medea reads the cold murder plainly in her own father's eyes and knows there can be no turning back now. That same night, she leads Jason quietly through the dark to the sacred grove where the sleepless dragon endlessly waits. She sings softly to the great beast in the old forgotten tongue and sprinkles drops that drag it down into sleep. For the very first time in living memory, the dragon's two burning eyes slowly slide shut and go completely dark. Jason seizes the heavy golden fleece, and its warm and ancient light spills bright across both their hungry, desperate faces. They run hard for the waiting ship as loud alarms wake the whole palace and angry torches flood the night. But King Aeetes is terribly fast, and his swift war fleet closes the gap on them across the cold black water. And here, Medea makes a choice so utterly cold that it will silently follow her for the rest of her long life. She has brought her own young brother Absyrtus along with them, trusting and unaware, onto the swiftly fleeing ship. To slow her relentless father, she sacrifices her own brother to the sea, scattering grief across the dark waves behind them. Aeetes must stop in anguish to gather what he has lost, and that cruel delay finally sets the ship free. She has chosen Jason over her father, over her home, over her brother, over her entire former self and life. Everything she now is, she has willingly burned down to cold ash for the one man who swore that single oath. The grieving lovers sail at last to the green island of Aia, where the sorceress Circe keeps her strange, quiet court. Circe purifies them both of the killing, washing the dark stain slowly away with old and secret sacred rites. Even the deathless gods themselves acknowledge the heavy weight of what Medea has thrown onto the fire for love. She has paid the full and terrible price, and she fully expects the oath she bought to be honored in kind. Now, home at last, to settle an old debt. They return home at last to Colchis, where the old usurper Helios still sits upon a throne he stole. Helios never once expected Jason to come back alive, let alone return carrying the bright and shining golden fleece. He has not the slightest intention of ever giving back the crown he took by cold treachery long ago. Jason has no army and no clever plan, only a foreign wife with real sunlight running through her veins. But Medea does not raise a single sword. She does not need one at all to quietly topple a king. She goes softly to the trusting daughters of Helios, wearing the kind and gentle face of a wandering healer. She shows them a trick, an old ram cut apart and boiled in a pot, rising out as a young lamb. Their young eyes go wide with sudden hope. Their aging father could surely be made young and strong again too. She promises them their beloved father will rise up renewed if only they faithfully follow her secret recipe. It is a lie, sharpened to a perfect and invisible point and aimed straight at their deep love for him. That very night, the loving daughters do the unthinkable thing, trusting the smiling foreign stranger completely and utterly. When the gray dawn finally comes, old Helios does not rise again. He is simply, finally, and forever gone. Medea has utterly destroyed Jason's greatest enemy in the world, without Jason ever once lifting a single finger himself. She kills with other people's hands, turning their own innocent hopes and love into the sharpest of hidden weapons. But the horrified people of Colchis recoil in terror from the monstrous and unnatural thing now loose in their city. Jason and Medea are driven out once more, exiles yet again, carrying their small and growing family far to the south. They come at long last to gleaming Corinth, bright beside the wine-dark sea, quietly hoping to finally find some rest. And for a little while it truly seems the long storm is over and a calm, quiet life might begin. They have 2 young sons together now, dark-haired and laughing boys who know nothing at all of the blood-soaked past. Medea has given Jason absolutely everything she had, and at long last she dares to believe that she is finally safe. But hunger in some men never sleeps. But Jason's true hunger was never really for love at all. It was always, from the very start, for a throne. And here in Corinth, old King Creon has one daughter, the soft young Princess Glaus, and no living son. Whoever marries the gentle Glaus will one fine day rise to rule the whole gleaming city beside the sea. Jason looks long at his fierce foreign wife, the witch who gladly gave up the entire world for his sake. Then he turns and looks at the soft Corinthian crown, and quietly, coldly, he makes his fateful choice. He casts faithful Medea aside like a worn cloak and announces he will marry the young Princess Glaus instead. He tells himself it is only wisdom, a clever and sensible move to secure his 2 young sons a future. He has completely forgotten the oath. He has forgotten the watching gods who once heard him swear it so eagerly. And he has forgotten that the quiet woman beside him once gave her own young brother to the cold sea. Medea stands alone in the great palace, perfectly still, and the slow and careful arithmetic begins once again. King Creon is certainly no fool, and he deeply fears the dark-eyed foreign woman his new son so carelessly discards. He knows exactly what she is, and he knows that a scorned and bitter sorceress is a loaded and waiting weapon. So Creon comes to her flanked by armed soldiers and coldly orders her into immediate and permanent exile. She must leave the city of Corinth at once, this very day, taking her 2 young sons along with her. Medea slowly bows her head and carefully puts on the convincing mask of a broken and frightened, harmless woman. She begs the wary king for one small mercy, a single day to gather and prepare her two innocent children. "Just one more day," she softly pleads, only to collect the little they can possibly carry away into the wilderness. Creon looks down at the weeping, trembling woman and decides that one short day surely cannot possibly matter at all. It is the single most expensive act of mercy in the whole long and bloody history of mythology, because Medea does not need an army or a sharp sword or even a single full and patient week. She needs exactly one day and nothing more, and the foolish, pitying king has just placed it into her hands. One day. It is far more than enough. The very moment the heavy doors swing shut, the grieving wife is suddenly gone, replaced by something far older and colder. Medea sits alone in the gathering dark and calmly lays out her revenge like a patient master builder at work. She understands perfectly what Jason truly loves, and it was never really her, not for a single moment at all. He loves his shining future, his proud bloodline, his great name carried forward into all the long years still to come. So she quietly decides to take from him every single thing that his precious future was ever going to be made of. First, the radiant new bride, the soft young girl who would one day give Jason his royal Corinthian sons. Medea carefully prepares a glorious wedding gift, fit for a princess on the very edge of becoming a great queen. A delicate and gleaming golden crown, and a flowing gown woven finer than anything else in all of rich Corinth. But she patiently soaks both gifts in a cruel poison that only the granddaughter of the blazing sun could ever brew. Then she does the very cruelest and cleverest thing of all in her entire long and meticulously planned revenge. She sends the beautiful, deadly gifts to the princess carried gently in the small and trusting hands of her own sons. In this world, hospitality is utterly sacred, and a kind gift offered by innocent children simply cannot ever be refused. She turns the very sacred customs that hold all of society tightly together into the perfect hidden blade for her revenge. The two small boys walk smiling into the bright palace, holding out their beautiful, glittering, and utterly deadly offering. Glaus sees the shining crown and the soft gown and simply cannot resist their cruel and overwhelming beauty. She slips the fine robe over her smooth shoulders and gently sets the heavy golden crown upon her fair hair. For one single beating heartbeat, she is the most radiant and envied bride the whole city has ever laid eyes on. Then the patient poison wakes, and an unseen and unstoppable fire pours through the clinging fabric straight into her skin. She cannot tear the lovely gifts away. The crown and the gown cling to her like burning, merciless hands. Old King Creon comes running in terror to save his only beloved daughter and seizes the deadly poisoned cloth. The same hidden fire takes him too, and father and daughter fall together, silent in the suddenly empty hall. In a single quiet afternoon, Medea has erased the bride, the king, and the bright future they together promised Jason. Jason's promised new throne is utterly gone before he has even once had the chance to sit upon it. But Medea is not yet finished because the very deepest and most terrible wound is still left for her to make. And now, the choice that no one saw coming. She walks slowly home to the two young boys who carried death itself today without ever once knowing what they held. They are hers as much as they are Jason's, the bright sunlight of Helios and her own blood mixed together. And here the ancient story makes a sudden turn that once shook an entire city of watchers into stunned silence. For Medea understands the harsh rules of this world with a terrible clarity no other soul in the story ever reaches. If the two boys live, then Jason still has a line, a name, a living thread reaching into all his tomorrows. If they live, then some part of him quietly survives, and her long and total revenge stays forever incomplete. She does not act from wild madness. She is, in fact, the only truly calm and reasoning mind left in Corinth. She coldly weighs her deep love for her sons against the full totality of everything she has sworn to undo. And with a grief that would surely shatter any other living soul on earth, she makes her last and darkest choice. Behind a single closed door, in the heavy quiet of the house, Medea ends Jason's entire bloodline forever and completely. The story itself shows nothing at all. It only lets the heavy door swing slowly shut on the lamplight within. When that door finally opens again, the boys are gone, and so is everything that Jason ever once hoped to keep. Jason comes running wildly through the narrow streets, far too late for his bride, far too late for the dead king. He arrives breathless at his own quiet house, only to find the very last of his whole world already taken away. Everything he so coldly traded his sacred oath for has turned to gray and bitter ash within a single short day. The crown, the radiant princess, the new throne, his 2 young sons, all of it now simply and completely gone. He looks up wildly, desperately searching for the foreign woman he betrayed, ready at last to pour out all his rage. And he finds her exactly where she has always been from the very beginning, standing one cold step ahead of him, and the sun, at last, comes for its own. High above the burning palace roof, the wide gray sky suddenly tears wide open with golden and impossible light. Her grandfather Helios has not abandoned his own blood, not even now, not even after all of this terrible darkness. A glittering chariot pulled by great winged serpents descends slowly from the blazing and burning heart of the sun itself. Medea calmly steps up into it, lifted clean and free out of the desperate reach of every mortal law and court. Jason stands far below in the smoking ruins, screaming up helplessly at a woman he can no longer ever touch again. There is no army on earth that can possibly follow her, and no court of men that can ever judge her. The divine blood she once spent absolutely everything to honor now lifts her up and carries her safely far away. She has played every single rule of this cruel and ancient world exactly and precisely to its final terminal end. Oaths, sacred hospitality, divine lineage, the favor of the high gods, all of it turned coldly into her perfect weapons. And the golden chariot climbs higher and higher into the open sky until it vanishes wholly into the light of Helios. She is gone, untouched, unpunished, and utterly free, the one player who alone truly understood the entire deadly game. And Jason, the once great hero who long ago commanded the most famous and celebrated ship ever built by mortal hands. He now has no bride, no living children, no throne, no divine favor, and no heroic purpose left to him at all. He has only a single broken oath and the long, gray, and empty years of a forgotten exile's wandering life. He wanders alone along the lonely coast, sleeping each night in the long shadow of the rotting ship that made his name. The great Argo sits cracked and abandoned on the sand, a silent monument to a glory that slowly curdled into dust. Then, one quiet and unremarkable day, the old wooden prow finally gives way and falls heavily from its weathered rest. It strikes him hard as he sleeps in its shade beneath it, and so the great hero Jason simply and quietly ends. There is no final battle, no song, and no last glory, only a passive death beneath a forgotten and rotting wreck. The very man who carelessly broke his sworn word is undone at the last by the very ship he broke it for. So ask once more the single question this whole story began with, the dark one that hangs over every part of it. When a man breaks a sacred oath sworn in the names of the gods, who is left to make him truly pay? The gods themselves did not strike proud Jason down. They never once needed to lift a single divine hand against him. They had already quietly made a creature who understood their own ancient rules far better than even they did themselves. Medea was never truly the monster of this old story, and she was never simply its weeping and helpless victim either. She was the only one in the entire tale who ever truly read the binding contract written deep into the world. And when a man signs that unbreakable contract in the holy names of the gods and then carelessly breaks it apart, she is the price. She was always, from the very first whispered oath in the dark, going to be the price. And somewhere, the sun still rises on every unpaid oath.